And part of your expertise there became abusive relationships and manipulative relationships. What did you come to learn about the structure of those relationships?
Well, that came about because my daughter's best friend, her mom came to me, and most people don't know what a social psychologist is. They think we're a clinical psychologist. She just heard psychologist and thought, and she came to me and said she had a close friend who was in an abusive relationship. Could I help? So I spoke with the woman. I did what I could, but I realized I didn't know enough about that specific topic. So I went and got additional training specifically about abusive relationships and seeing what a pervasive problem it is. I've been working in that field, not only in that field, but in that field ever since.
What do we know about how those relationships work?
What
Or don't?
what do I know? Yes, yeah, the difference. Unfortunately, I've run up against a bit of a wall for a lot of people because I look at most of the domestic violence services that we have now, they're pretty much the same as when I started in this business 20 years ago, because they wait until after someone gets into a very imbalanced, toxic relationship, and then if it gets really serious and physical, they'll offer them some short-term temporary topical minimal help. I looked at it on the other way after working there in the field for about 9 years. I realized my social psychology was actually very valuable because I recognized the tactics, the manipulation tactics being used by abusers from the very start of these relationships. And what I saw was that there were only a set number of manipulative tactics being used no matter who the person was. It was a small, discrete set. I could teach the information to anyone. So I put my Unmasking the Abuser program together and started teaching it to anyone age 13 and above.
What are some of those tactics?
Well, the first thing I would say is too much too soon. One of the things that with abusers have a lot of psychological problems. And when I do workshops, depending on the demographics of the participants, I talk about the psychology of abusers because it's quite distinct. And one thing is they are very uncomfortable in a relationship where they don't have total and complete control. So the relationship goes really fast. So you go from not the guy's not in your life to he's all over your life in one fell swoop.
Right. That sounds a lot like falling in love. Is it hard to tell the difference?
No, it's not hard to tell the difference at all. It really isn't. In fact, one of the things I try to do is teach the difference between falling in love with someone and being lured into a manipulative and toxic relationship because there it is quite distinct and it is really important to know the difference.
So what is that? Because if I'm going head over heels, I'm crazy about somebody, I can't imagine living without them because all of the dopamine is juicing my brain and I have visions of us together forever. How is that noticeably distinct from what you're talking about, the kind of
Well,
the warning signs of a manipulative or abusive relationship?
well, first of all, one has to ask how quickly did it happen? Um, with the abuser, the relationship, first of all, there are tactics happening. You don't just fall in love. This person is purposely putting lures out there to pull you closer. So, using things like what I call the fairy tale lure. The moment you go out, they're talking about a future together, they're talking about happily ever after, they're talking about naming your children, this kind of thing. Um, I also teach people if you fall in love and collapse yourself into relationships, you're going to spend a lot of time in therapy. That's just not a good way to run your life. You're going to find yourself in love with people who don't love you back. You're going to find yourself in unhealthy relationships. Put the brakes on it first. Be careful because if you choose wrong, it can be extremely destructive to your life. Anything real will be there if you are just a little bit more cautious. Anything real bears up under scrutiny.
How do you teach resilience once people are in such a relationship?
Well, it's really challenging. You have to start where you are. One of the things, I'm putting the course together, and I was writing today about the fact that often people fail at acquiring new skills because they try to do it all at once. And you always have to start where you are. And the Chinese have a very wise saying that, journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. If you're going to start being resilient, if you're going to get out of an abusive relationship, you have to start where you are. So emotionally, just pulling back just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. And then once you get used to being there, you pull back a little further, you pull back a little further, you pull back a little further.
This dynamic between someone who is potentially an abusive or manipulative partner in a relationship and the target of their affection, if you can call it that, that can be reflected in group dynamics at a social level as well. And that's one of your sort of great insights, I suppose. Can you tell us the connection there?
Well, it's interesting that one of the things with my podcast series, for instance, I took my entire project and I put it in a podcast series called Unmasking the Abuser. And I walk you through all the tactics. And as I said, the list isn't long. But what is amazing is that you see the same tactics being used, whether the person using them is male or female, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or a work relationship. You also see it in social movements. You see the same sort of lures being used, like a love bombing. If you look up the word love bombing, you see a lot of that in cults. And what that is someone just showering you with praise and superficial acceptance and talking about how wonderful you are and how great you are. But it comes with conditions. If you do anything, if you ask questions, if you stand back a little, if you're not willing to immediately collapse yourself into that relationship, then that tap of wonderful praise and good feelings is turned off immediately. And you see social movements doing it all the time.